Hello there. Hi. Welcome to Butterfly Effect, a podcast all about interviewing people. I'm your host, Tristan Ettleman. We're back from the regular kind of hiatus between eps as they happen, just coming back when we got the possibility. And this was a good possibility. I talked to Mega Ran a couple weeks ago, Raheem Jarbo, but known widely as Mega Ran, the rapper. Nerdcore rapper, and I had been suggested to talk to him a while ago by a friend of mine, an actually previous guest on the show, Austin Clark, and I checked out his music and I loved it. I had known of him because he raps about nerdy things. Specifically, he's well known for rapping about Mega Man. He's made quite a few Mega Man concept albums and such. But Final Fantasy and all kinds of stuff, and he has a wide array of influences, and he puts out a ton of music. So it's kind of tough to chart the entire progression, but I think we got there. I think we dive deep into the music itself as well as the life of Mega Ran. You know, it's interesting because he lives here in Phoenix. And where I'm at, and he moved here, willingly. Not that that's crazy, but it's just funny because it really does put into perspective that I want to get out of here, but I've lived here almost all my life, and I think people just need a change of pace. And honestly, when I was talking to him, I realized, Phoenix isn't so bad. It really is way better culturally than it was about 10 years ago or what have you. I mean, just as an example, Mega Ran is here now. He's a sign of the times that there's a lot of cool stuff going on in Phoenix in terms of music and culture and stuff like that. And I don't know if it was necessarily like that 10 years ago. I know it wasn't necessarily in a place to be really mindful of it, but that being said, I really do think it's, even in the past, let's say 45 years, it's changed a lot, and that's great. It's cool. And I myself may be on my way out soon, or I might not. So, I'm staying. It's getting better in terms of things to appreciate, what have you. And actually, I'm going to be working at the Arizona Republic, the local newspaper, the big one for the state, as an intern this fall. So that'll be cool. I'll hopefully gather even more appreciation for our fine city and state. That's always a good thing to have. Hometown pride, they call it. Even though, I would consider Phoenix my hometown at this point. I mean, I've lived here for more than half my life. It doesn't really matter that I was from somewhere else before that because I wasn't really even conscious for most of it. So, but yeah. Anyways, Mega Ran is on the show, as I mentioned, and you should check out his music. I think the best way to look it up is Mega Ran Music, I believe is the URL, but he has a BandCamp. We talk about the wonders and beauty of BandCamp that has all his releases on there. It's a treasure trove of music, and he has a new album coming out very soon, I believe in September, maybe even September 1. Wow, I don't know why I said September 1, like I'm British or something. But called Extra Credit. I hope I'm remembering correctly because I honestly don't have notes here. But we talk about it, and if you go to his BandCamp, you'll see everything there. And awesome talk. I'm learning a lot more about HipHop as someone who didn't grow up with it and didn't necessarily appreciate it until probably 2 years. So I'm delving deep and talking to Mega Ran helped me out with that. So without further ado, let's listen to my conversation with Mega Ran. So what's new with the Mega Ran and the music and everything? I mean, you're a prolific guy. You do a lot. You put out a lot of music. So I don't know what the latest chronological project has been.
There hasn't technically been one for, I guess, a little while. Mm-hmm. The latest release was in March. It was a wrestling project called Materia.
Right.
That, as well as also in March was a Notorious B.I.G. tribute project called Ready to Live. So those both came out in March. So I've been kind of resting since then, just working on the next release. The next one will be September 1st. So just trying to gear up for that one.
That only with you would you say March was a long time ago? Yeah, there's not much. Like, you put out a lot of stuff. I mean, I keep saying that, but it's like it's impressive the discography, and you do a lot of collabs and stuff like that. And
yeah,
I know you did a track with Brian Altano, who I'm a fan of, and recently too. But
yes, most of my latest work have been Patreon projects.
Right.
So what I do is every month we do 1 to 2 songs based on whatever game I'm feeling or into that month, and we work on a song just for the fans. That way, people, are able to be satiated with new music that they want, and at the same time, I'm not like inundating or overwhelming the rest of the audience with new stuff. So those guys who are just the biggest, brightest, boldest fans
sure.
are able to stay up with what I'm working on. So the Patreon has really helped me for that.
Well, you seem to have embraced, I mean, it makes sense with the nature of your music and stuff, but the new delivery systems, as it were, like, BandCamp and just using the internet as the platform it was meant to be used. You don't have to wait years between, releases with a full studio album. You can put out tracks, and that's what you do, so...
Yeah, I think things move so fast on the internet,
sure.
And so therefore it's good to keep up with things. Every once in a while, I don't necessarily want to have to release a full-length album every time I have something to say,
right. Yeah, and that makes sense.
Yeah, back in the days, that was really our favorite artist's only option. When it was time to speak, it was like, here comes the big album.
Right.
And I might just really like the new Netflix show that comes on, and then I can sit down with some friends and work on a song about it.
Yeah, that's you. But you do both, I'd say. So you kind of get the best of both worlds in that way. Because people kind of lament the end of the album, as a concept, and you definitely embrace that in addition to, doing standalone singles, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. The last full-length album that I call my last full release was actually September 2015, the RNDM album,
right,
which was a full-length album, 17 tracks plus bonus tracks, and definitely the biggest release that I had put out in a very long time. So it's definitely put out together and purposely and with a plan, even when sometimes it seems sporadic and crazy. It's usually a method to the madness.
Of course, yeah. So where did you grow up? Where are you from originally?
I am from Philadelphia, so that's where I grew up for most of my life, right in the city. And I moved in 2006 to Phoenix, Arizona,
right, just
to explore new opportunities, greener pastures, I guess, and try some things out. And I've been here just over 10 years, and it's been a really wild adventure. Like the second part of my story
sure.
mostly has taken place here, and as well as what I tell people is that my home is the internet, because I feel like through there I've been able to travel so many places through that medium.
Right, and you do travel a lot of places. You tour around pretty frequently, right? Like, and
I do.
Pretty cool, exotic places and stuff like that, like all over the country and internationally as well. So.
Yes, I have been. I just came back from Washington D.C., which isn't the most exotic location, but it was really awesome. We got a chance to play a live show at the Smithsonian Museum.
Oh, cool!
Which is pretty amazing. Like, it's as far as I know, one of the first times there have been hip hop concerts in the museum, especially with my style of hip hop.
Sure.
It was definitely something cool, and we're breaking down barriers everywhere we go, which is really awesome and inspiring.
Was it a video game? Do they have a video game exhibit or something now or something?
Yes, every year they do a Smithsonian arcade event.
Oh, cool. I didn't realize that.
And they bring in, gamers, they bring in game developers, they bring in arcade cabinets, and then they bring in special speakers, and they bring in musicians.
Yeah.
And this is the second year that we've been able to be a part of it to play live concerts there. So that's really awesome.
Awesome. Well, back to the Phoenix thing. As a Phoenix transplant myself, but at a much younger age, it's now what I consider to be my home, even though I'm originally from California. What do you think about the city? Do you like the city? I'm assuming you do, because you live here. And
well, yeah, I better. If I live here, I better. But I do. I feel like I've seen the city grow so much and change so much in the 9 years I've been here. Just watching the music scene change, the landscape change, visually, and watching all new people come and new places pop up, and it's been exciting. I think Phoenix now is in a really cool place. The city, the downtown area has popped up. There's all types of urban culture and development going on out here that has made me proud to be here. So a lot of cool things are happening. A lot of great musicians out here as well. So it's definitely been very inspiring being here the last few years.
Yeah, I don't think it's considered one of the great or big cities necessarily in the country, which is, I think, changing. I think definitely the perspective of, Arizona or Phoenix being very, red or very politically and being very white or whatever is definitely not the case. It's so diverse here. And I think that's the one thing that I take issue with when people kind of, specifically Phoenix. I mean, I guess I can't speak to the rest of the state, but
yeah, people kind of paint the entire state with this brush of old white,
sure. And I live in Mesa, and that is kind of the brush over here, but
well, yeah,
but that's
over there.
Too.
That is the case.
There's still pockets of it's like a city. There are all kinds of different people everywhere, but
absolutely. So yeah, if you look out and you get out and you meet people and experience some things, that perspective can change. But yeah, from the outside, a lot of people look at it like, oh, why would you be there? It's the desert and it's red, and this isn't a place that necessarily encourages growth, development, and culture, creativity.
Yeah.
And maybe it was like that when I first moved here, but I definitely don't see that now, and I see some amazing things happening and great stuff inspiring me every day.
That's awesome. Yeah, and so you grew up in Philadelphia. You lived there at this point most of your life. How what was the impetus to leave there, and what was kind of the tone like when you left versus like when you were growing up and stuff?
Well, I was moonlighting in music, but I was mainly a teacher. Mm-hmm. I was teaching elementary school when I left, and we just had a really bad winter, and I kind of made a huge knee-jerk reaction to a really rough winter season. I remember snowstorms going until like late March or April, like having just dealing with a lot of weather stuff, and me just being fed up and wanting to explore other things. Not just that, but I think that was a big part of it, but also musically, I felt like Philadelphia was kind of stuck in its ways, and it's very, it's a city that's already, had its successes and had its failures, and it's always existed in the shadow of New York City.
Sure, of course.
And, so I feel like it's always had kind of a chip on its shoulder, and, and I felt like that wasn't where I wanted to be musically and creatively. It was kind of stunning my growth. And I just wanted to try something new. And I kind of rolled the dice, and I was down to a bunch of different choices, and Phoenix wound up being the place, mainly because it was the place that offered me a job that paid enough to substantiate me moving.
Sure.
So there it was, and I hopped in my car and got out of there. And but now I've seen Philadelphia take so many great strides and become that city that I had maybe wished that I was living in. And now it's great, but I think it's just more of a microcosm of America now, just changing, growing up, becoming a little cooler, a little more open-minded, a little more hip. And so I think that that's something I would have probably experienced everywhere. but I definitely see them when I go back to Philadelphia. I'm like, wow, there's nerdy conventions, and there's things that foster this kind of upbringing, and I wish that was there when I was there.
Yeah, and I think that, and you're right though, that might be just recently, because even in Phoenix itself, that definitely wasn't a thing until the past few years. The Comic-Con here has grown, and there's all kinds of different nerdy conventions and stuff like that. But I remember as a kid, that wasn't really the part of the equation for sure. But so what were your influences and stuff like that when you were growing up? I mean, obviously you wear those on your sleeve in your music and stuff, but hip hop and games, I would assume, were a big part of your childhood and young adulthood.
Oh, totally. Hip hop and games have definitely been my main influences growing up and continue to be. So composers like Koji Kondo or Nobuo Uematsu, and growing up listening to those soundtracks and things, and then me literally one day just getting the idea to say, hey, why don't I break this apart, figure out how it was done, and then maybe try to add some new things to it and make it into a new creation. And that was me experimenting is what led to what would become kind of my style, and just blending hip hop with a lot of those things, because you didn't see any hip hop representation in the video game world. So it was just me taking those two things and putting them together, and that's where it was. Who were
your guys? I mean, I'm assuming Biggie was it for you?
Well, yeah, big fan of Biggie. A Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul.
Tribe is amazing.
Yeah,
I think I don't want to say it's my favorite they're my favorite hip hop group or whatever, but they're up there definitely.
Yeah, they're way up there for me too, and just there was so much cool stuff back then. But I think the coolest thing is that stuff that sounded different was able to exist at the same time. I mean, there was such a balance even within the top 40 and the radio and stuff. You could have Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre. You could have Wu-Tang Clan. You could have A Tribe Called Quest. You could have De La Soul. And then you could have Outkast. And all these folks existing at the same time, all creating very different music. Whereas now it feels like you have to create something that fits into this mold to even get a sniff of attention, So I feel like it was more open. People were more open to something different and interesting back then. So that was when I really got into it. So Tribe, huge part of my upbringing.
Yeah. So, and then of course in the video games, was the NES your right there in the crucible of influences there? Because obviously that's kind of what you pay homage to with your music.
Most times, yes. I think the NES was the beginning of video game music for me. I think that, I was playing video games since the Atari 2600. My cousin had it in television. I played that a little bit. But I don't really remember having music become such a part of the experience until Super Mario Brothers or things like that. So definitely was the NES. Yeah,
and of course, there was, I guess there wasn't really music on the Atari stuff. There was just little sound effects. But Mega Man specifically, that obviously you take inspiration from, was such a
I've
revelation.
talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
A little bit.
But even just in terms of, yes, the music is great, but it's almost like it created video game music. I mean, there's obviously, Mario Bros. Theme is amazing, and Zelda theme is amazing. Everything Koji Kondo did and all kinds of stuff in the NES, but it was so layered, and they did stuff with the hardware that was outside of what that early stuff on the NES. Like just 1 or 2 years later, they had figured something totally different out.
Yeah, and that's really what touched me. I think Mega Man, particularly Mega Man 2, coming out with these lush layered backgrounds and characters, as well as the music being amazing. And I think where it really got me, it was when I discovered that you could pause the game in Mega Man 2 and still hear the music. The music would still go, and that was something that kept that music in my head, so heavy. And I would take a little recorder that I had and sit it right next to the TV during the pause times and just hit record and record a couple of loops of the music so that I could put it on a Walkman and take it to school, you know. So meanwhile, one side of the Walkman's tape might have been A Tribe Called Quest or Public Enemy's new album. The other side was my Mega Man or my Mario or my DuckTales soundtrack stuff.
Yeah, that's great. That's, you know, it's just funny to hear because the two are blended so well now by you and your peers and stuff, and it really did just come from a totally DIY. Let's make this thing out of nothing, or at least out of two separate things, and it's good. That's cool to hear. But so what was the teaching inspiration, and why did you go down that road? Was music and all that kind of a hobby, and you thought I should get a real job, or what was the thinking?
Well, yeah, music was definitely the side hustle, if there was such a thing. I would go to open mics and try to work on making beats and things at home in my spare time. But, you know, education was definitely my first thing. My mother was very, very adamant about education being the key to freedom. And she would always, you know, explain that to me. Like, education is the thing that no one can take away from you. So you got to get that going. No, she was not a teacher. But she was quite the student, you know. She went to college, she went to nursing school, she went through so many different things trying to figure out what she wanted to do. And education was always a big part of it for her.
Yeah, it's a thread, for sure.
And that was me trying to figure out what I was going to do. And then I had a gentleman in college, one of my professors, just tell me one day, like, you know, I think you'd make a really good professor one day. And I'm like, wow, maybe. And that's what made me think about it. And so from then, my goal was to try to be a professor. And along the way, I heard about a program called Teach for America, where you were able to teach in any city in America where there was need, and be able to make a true difference on the front lines. And so I did that. And I went to teach middle school in Philadelphia, and I was kind of hooked. Like, this is what I want to do. This is where I need to be. And that was it. It changed my trajectory to the point where now I was a full-time teacher, but also that gave me a lot of freedom to create music because I had weekends off and I had summers off, so I could tour and things like that. And so that just gave me much more time to start working on things. And maybe 3 years into my move to Phoenix, I made an album called Black Materia, which was the album based on my Final Fantasy stuff. And that was the album that gave me the courage to kind of step away from my job and do this full time, because I had so many offers to tour and to play really cool gigs that I figured, well, let me just try this out. You know, worst case scenario, if I don't like it. Again, education is something that you can't take away, so I still have it. So
they
always
need teachers.
Yeah, they will always need teachers. There will be 30-year-old teachers, 40-year-old teachers, 50-year-old teachers, 60-year-old teachers. So, however, the window's much smaller to be a touring musician. So,
sure, of course.
So I figured I would just give it a go, and here I am. Rest is history.
Out. Yeah, well, the teaching is a noble profession, I would say, and my girlfriend's family is a family of teachers, and it's definitely something that I respect wholeheartedly, because teachers change you. You know, I can cite, you know, 2 or 3 teachers that changed the world, you know, for me. So that's where it kind of begins, and it's good to hear that you obviously had such passion for it and stuff. And I can't imagine that you don't take some of the lessons and some of the stuff you learned there into how you just deal with people in real life or in the music industry. I mean,
it's made me a better performer, a better, you know, businessman, musician, for sure. All the tools I learned in the classroom.
Were you the cool teacher?
Well, you know, I was told that when I first started that is not the way to to
Sure.
get over.
Of course.
Being fun, and they would just run right over you.
Right.
And I can absolutely say that is the truth. So
Really?
being the fun teacher, it might work out in the beginning, but they will absolutely take advantage of it, especially with middle school. Middle school kids are the smartest, slickest, kids. So they're very devious. And that was me. I tried that. Now I'm like, and I would tell people that all the time, like, nah, I was a mean teacher, and they almost don't believe it, because I'm so nice. But
sure.
the rule is you don't smile until Christmas. You give them 3 months of just really hardcore stares and looks and no nonsense, and then all of a sudden, Christmas holiday, you do something fun before the break, and then they come back and they're already in their ways, so they're going to behave,
Sure.
they're going to respect you.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the way to go. You start off very stern, and then eventually you let up a little bit along the way.
Did any of them know about your music?
Yeah, I used to tell them about my music. Sometimes they would find out.
Sure.
They'd find me on YouTube, or if they were good in class, I would give them my CDs as a reward. Things like that. I used to freestyle in class with them just to show them what I did, and then like never do it again. Like, all right, there it is, and now let's get to work.
See, what you're describing is the cool teacher to me. It's not necessarily the teacher that is like, you can do whatever, but it's the one that has the discipline, but also is a good teacher, first of all, and then will show these little cracks of kind of, obviously we're all humans here, so let's,
I guess that's true. Yeah, I can see that. I think that is the good teacher. That's
right.
Hard but fair.
That's what my kind of perspective on it is, because those are the ones that I remember and owe something to. So.
Yep.
But so you went. You already alluded to the fact that you went full time into music, but before that, of course, you had the Mega Ran album.
Yes.
And that was kind of the breakthrough, right? Because you had put out an album or two before that, right?
I did an album before that called The Call in 2006. That was my first release. Very traditional hip hop. Still, I think, an amazing album that I go back to a lot. And I gave my all to it. I put a lot into it, and it was a project that I feel like kind of drained me. We were in some rough times back then, politically, and so I just kind of used that album to vent and talk about those things and those times. And
maybe you should do another one like that.
And I think that it may be time for another one. And so, every once in a while, it comes a time where you got to just kind of speak up about what's going on. And that's really what that album was, just letting it out. But I always tell people that after that album, I felt pretty drained. I felt like emotionally, creatively drained, like I had said everything I had to say. And I thought I wasn't even going to make another album. I thought music was done for me, because I wasn't inspired anymore. And so when I moved to Arizona, it was me getting away from it, stepping away from the scene, because every day I was out, every night, going to clubs, emailing promoters, talking to people, attempting to get further. And it just became a tough grind for me. Yeah. And I just got a little frustrated, because I felt like what I was making was great, but at the same time, I felt like it wasn't getting the attention that it deserved. And once you start feeling like that, you're kind of lost when it comes to music, and you're like, no, everyone should be celebrating me.
Right. I've had a few moments like that, not in music, but in general, yeah.
Yeah, you're like, but look at what these guys are doing, and why isn't this working out for me? And I think at that moment you're beginning to lose. You're sliding down a very dangerous slope, and that's what happened with me. And I feel like I needed a break, and that was a big part of the reason why I left Philly. And so going to Phoenix, starting from zero, from scratch, not having to worry about chasing that life anymore, was a relief for me, and it was actually something I look forward to. And then I just would, in my spare time, just play a bunch of video games. And so at that time, I discovered emulators, and I was able to play all my old favorite games again. And I just loved it. And one day, I was just humming the Mega Man music as I was playing, and I just thought, wait a minute, let me try something. And it was that got me back into making beats and back into writing rhymes after about a year and a half off. So So yeah, that was where the inspiration came from. It was from these older games that had, changed so much of my life back in the day. It was my chance to kind of give a little bit back to that, which was fun.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I don't know the exact history of Nerdcore or anything related to it, but how much of that was out there? I mean, Biggie rapped about Super Nintendo and Genesis and stuff, and obviously people had included references to video games and other music and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, you have Wu-Tang Clan, which was an entire group of guys based on Saturday morning kung fu flicks, So it was there, but I didn't imagine or understand it fully. So when I was trying to create, my biggest inspirations were a guy named MF Doom, who had made...
I forgot about the MF Doom connection. I was going to bring it up earlier, and I forgot to...
Yeah, so that was me. MF Doom, I heard him and Madlib made an album called Mad Villainy and in 2005, which is widely regarded as a classic album. A lot of references to a lot of cartoons, video games, comics. Then Deltron, Del the Funky Homo Sapien, created a lot of really cool stuff even before Deltron, where he was exploring space and gaming. And he made what a lot of people arguably call the first Nerdcore record, which is called Protoculture. And
what year was that?
That was, gosh, I really don't remember, but it's about the Sega Dreamcast. So it's
around that time then.
It was probably like 99, 2000.
Wow.
And so he predates a lot of guys, but we don't necessarily call him Nerdcore. But little did I know at the same time, Nerdcore was going on because a guy named MC Frontalot called his music Nerdcore and developed the term in, I think, 2004 or so. So that existed, but he was in another place, and I was not anywhere near him, and therefore I didn't know. So,
and the internet wasn't as wide then as it is now in terms of connections like that, and he was still pretty local by then, right? Like he wasn't like an internet sensation necessarily or anything like that.
No, I mean, most of the stuff he actually, I guess, was sort of an internet sensation.
I didn't find out about Nerdcore till way after it exploded with you guys.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think he was performing live, but he was releasing music in 99 and 2000 online in a lot of different circles and there was something great called Song Fight, which was this big competition, songwriting competition that existed, and he would create there was a weekly songs, and MC Frontalot would win a lot, and this is what led to him becoming more notable. And so this is when the concept of releasing music online became a big thing. But I didn't find him until maybe 2008 or so when he created a documentary called Nerdcore Rising.
Oh, right. I must have seen a part of that because I knew I'd seen some kind of video footage about him, and I could not place where I had seen it, but that's probably what it is then.
It could have been it. So I was making records in 2007, just basically covering video game music, and I didn't realize that there were so many, I guess, subcategories of nerd music, which was bigger than nerdcore, because nerd music was something that encompassed video game music as well as nerdcore hip-hop, which are both two very different things, as well as chiptune, which was the third thing.
Sure.
And so what I was doing was somewhere in an intersection between those three, and still is to this day, and I think that's helped me out a whole lot, is that I've been able to exist in so many different scenes and meet so many really cool folks because of those things. Like, I go to Japan, I play a chiptune festival. I play in the States, I'm playing video game music festivals or nerdcore festivals. Smithsonian was a video game thing, so there were no other nerdcore rappers involved in that. So I think being able to exist in a couple different spaces really helped me out. And so we put out the Mega Man album. Capcom heard it, and that was actually 10 years ago to probably last month or so, and invited us out to San Diego Comic-Con. That story I've told a lot about them eventually giving me a license to create what I was already creating and permission to create it without fear of lawsuit,
legal,
which was about the best thing I could have achieved.
Yeah. When you were first putting out the album, were you worried about that, or did you think no one's going to even like?
Oh yeah, I was big time. Yeah, I was so worried. I even created a separate MySpace page. What I did was I created I had a page for Random, which was what I was calling myself at the time, and then I had a page for Mega Ran, which was what I would push the album under. And so because I didn't want any legal action to wind up shutting down my MySpace page or things like that, I would just use the Mega Ran page to promote the album. And because I was very afraid of that. But coming from a school of hip-hop where, sampling is such a big part of our culture, but I didn't necessarily expect anyone in other cultures to understand that.
Right.
And
yeah, it was unprecedented in terms of using the video game sampling. It wasn't really... It's just considered a legal issue, not necessarily like, oh, that's cool, like they're paying homage or whatever, but...
right. Yeah, absolutely.
So the Capcom license thing was such a big deal, and what were the next couple releases after that? You did a couple albums, right, in conjunction with 9 and 10, which in themselves, those games were such a big deal.
Oh yeah, big time. I feel like a small part of me, feels like the success of the first Mega Ran album is what it was a great matter of great timing. As far as it being the 10th anniversary, or I think at that time it was
the 20th, right?
20th anniversary of Mega Man, because it came out in '87. And so I think timing, and I'm always, even to this day, still very cognizant of times, dates, and commemorating things. I'm a big history guy, so that's important to me. This year's the 30th anniversary of Zelda, so I'm really, excited about that and working on something for that as well.
Cool.
So yeah, we're working on stuff, and I think just putting it out when I did helped a lot, and those guys were into it, and then they told us, hey, we're working on, what a coincidence, we're about to revisit the retro as well and make this a new game that looks like an old game called Mega Man 9. And I'm like, what? And I thought that was amazing, and I was all about it. And then someone who worked at I guess the community division at Capcom asked me to, in so many words, it would be really cool if you created a song for the new game that's coming out, the Mega Man 9 game. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink kind of thing. And I'm like, well, you guys have done so much for me, so of course, let me hear the soundtrack and I'll work on something. And they sent me the soundtrack, and one of the songs is titled Splash Blue. And that's the one that was for Splash Woman. And I was like, wait, there's a female boss character? Like, this is amazing. So I have to make a song about her. And so that was what I did. And that went on to be actually my most popular of all the Mega Man songs. And I think the timing of that as well was great. And with it being a really good game, well received, and with a great soundtrack. Ippo Yamada and the guys did an amazing job on that. And so I was honored to be able to do my part to hopefully help some more people listen to it, Yeah,
it was a really cool revitalization of Mega Man, those late 2000s there. With you and the games and everything, it was like a whole fever pitch of retro Mega Man stuff. I wish we could get it back a little bit, but that's neither here nor there. But it was really kind of cool as someone who didn't grow up with those games to be like, oh, why is everyone talking about this blue robot guy, and fall into it that way. I mean, Mega Man 9 wasn't my first Mega Man game, but it did lead me to go back and check out the other ones and stuff. So it was definitely. Nice. I think that their strategy worked or whatever, but
it did.
But yeah. So you put out. As again, so much. I love Black Materia.
Thank you.
And among many, but that was a pretty ambitious album, right? Like that it seemed to be a I don't know if it's their most popular album, I remember, but when it came out, I remember it being very the talk of the town. It had a lot of buzz.
Yeah, there was a really good amount of buzz around it, and it's something I didn't expect. I was actually still teaching, when I put it out, and it definitely was so much work. And at that time, one of my best friend and my DJ and the guy I recorded with, DJ DN3, who I did so much early work with, had moved that year. So he moved from Phoenix to San Francisco, and I had to start recording on my own, and that was the first time that I had to do that. So I started learning how to do all these things, and it was just so tough for me, and I was just really I thought it wasn't going to happen, especially making an album that big and having to do it on my own. And so I got help, and the help I got was from other artists to get them to play other characters. And I thought that helped me out a lot. It took a lot of stress off of me and helped me to create. And I recorded a lot of it in my apartment building, and in my closet, and just making a way out of no way. I was so determined to finish it up. And it came out really, really great. And so I'm super, super proud of it. It's still a record that I feel like, man, I listen back and I hear those imperfections because of the limitations of what I was doing and working with. But I think those make it they still make it extra special for me. And I'm so proud of it. I still listen to it at least once a year. I still play the game at least once a year too. And so I find it a good album to play on road trips for me. So
yeah, it's I mean, I guess a lot of your albums are like this, and especially the Mega Man ones. But Black Materia is definitely like a concept album, right? Would you describe it as?
Oh, absolutely.
It's a story like the game itself, but and a lot of your work is like that. But Black Materia specifically feels very. It very much in that tradition of the concept album for sure.
Yes, definitely.
So the string of releases and stuff. I really like the I guess I don't know if it's an EP or what you classify it as, the Emerald Nights.
Yeah.
That you put out.
Yeah, with Bag of Tricks Cat, who's from Arizona like me. He and I traveled together. We went on a UK tour a couple years ago, and we just had a great time and started working on an album out there. And I thought it was just such a great story and experience that we recorded most of that while we were in the UK. And so it's all about traveling, and it's all about the experiences, the ups and downs. And I listen back to it now, and I'm like, it's kind of a downer. I feel like we do a lot of lamenting on what's hard about making music. And I'm glad you mentioned it, because we're actually working on a new one. And we just recorded the second or third song for it last night, and
awesome.
And we were determined that it's not going to sound anything like the first one. So we're it's much more celebratory. We're up and excited and thankful, and it's fun. It's going to bring smiles to faces, and I'm so looking forward to it.
Yeah, I guess it's the cynic in me that resonated with the darkness, but it did feel, knowing that you did record it out and about, it did put a different kind of energy on it for sure. And I love the song that'll get us sued or whatever. I don't know what it's called.
Oh yeah, the song that'll.
But it's a great sampling, and because everyone knows the Beatles.
Yeah, you don't mess with the Beatles.
Super forgiving, yeah. They're well known as you can sample them as much as you like. You can just put
totally. But, but I feel like as an artist who's done a lot of sampling, sampling is a big part of what I do, and why not take a chance with something like that, And we put it. That's funny. So if you heard that, it means you got it from the BandCamp version, which wasn't for sale. So otherwise, I would never ever release this. So thank God for places like BandCamp to allow us to put out free, promotional type tracks that may sample something from someone, because SoundCloud wouldn't allow it. YouTube wouldn't allow it. iTunes wouldn't allow it. So there's so many places that wouldn't have let us put that out, but BandCamp was the place that did.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not some kind of BandCamp aficionado or something. I follow who I follow, and if they put stuff on BandCamp, that's where I go. But just recently there's been a lot of goodwill for it too because of all their support for trans artists and stuff like that. So it's definitely it's a cool place.
Oh yeah, BandCamp is amazing. I give it full props. I've been using it since I think 2009 or 10, and it's my preferred method of music distribution, just because of how awesome the people are who work there. You know, and I think that those folks, I send them an email with a question, they instantly respond. So there's things like that I look at. No matter how big a company gets, if they can take the time to talk to people, then they got my support. Right.
So, who are you listening to now? That because you said that things were more people, I should say, were trying out new things back in, I guess, the golden age in the '90s of hip hop and stuff. But there's people out there, obviously now, yourself included, doing cool different things. Who are you listening to, whether it be nerdcore, hip hop, music in general, that you're kind of vibing with and really kind of enjoying?
Oh man, there's so many folks I'm enjoying, but right now I'm listening to Chance the Rapper. I just listened to a lot of my friends make amazing music, and that's going to sound kind of biased, but MC Lars sent me some stuff that I really like. MC Frontalot. A guy named Sky Blue, whose records I put out is always inspiring. Man, I just listened to Sadistic's new album. Very different for what I would, listen to normally, but I really enjoy the artistry that goes into it. Super good stuff. Man, there's so much. I gotta really think back now. There's a guy.
Well, I ask because the world doesn't necessarily need more white guys getting into hip hop, but I'm one of them now, and it definitely was something I didn't grow up with.
Okay.
So I never had that experience, and now I'm finding like, damn, I wish I was immersed in that in some way. So now I'm kind of trying to delve deeper, and you have the old, you have the classic and the standbys and the legends, right, in the industry. Those are easy to find.
Oh yeah.
I'm just trying to find, the current wave of it too.
Oh yeah, there's so much good stuff I think currently that you can hop into. Childish Gambino's great.
Yeah.
You've probably heard him.
Because I'm a white guy and getting into hip hop.
I find, gosh, this guy named Open Mike Eagle who makes amazingly smart music.
Oh shit! Yeah, I think how do I know him? Yes, I think I've heard of him. Anyway, sorry.
Okay. Samus, her stuff is awesome. There's a guy named Milo who I really love. I think if you're into some really smart, fun stuff that's pushing the boundaries of what hip hop can sound like, I really enjoy his stuff. There's a guy named Billy Woods who's awesome. There is a guy named Chesky Ramos who's amazing. So much good stuff. But again, a lot of those guys are either personal friends or friends who I've met through music, where I've heard their music and then going out to catch a show and then become friends. And I hugely, highly recommend them.
Would you say it's I guess this is kind of obviously very subjective and kind of maybe not useful question, but would you say it's a good time for hip hop? Because there's I forgot what it was, but some kind of statistic or something that hip hop and R&B, I guess, is what they classified it as, is now like officially more popular than rock music.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
In the United States.
So your question is it a good time?
Well, of course it's a good time, but how do you feel about the state of the art form or because some would say rock sucked when it got way more commercial, so I'm just wondering how you feel about that kind of thing.
I gotta say, of course, the popular stuff is always going to be a little less on the creative side and the substance side, but overall, I do feel like we have more great rap music now than at any time that I can ever remember.
Yeah.
And but it's just you gotta dig for it a little bit.
Sure.
And I think that a lot of times people don't want to necessarily do that work. So if you're looking for something to just pop up and fall in your lap, it's probably not going to be the greatest thing. So yeah, I absolutely feel like it's something that this is a great, amazing time for hip hop. Yeah, Absolutely.
I just hear, and not to put down anything you said earlier, I just hear this kind of sentiment that, like, oh, things were good in the good old days. I'm totally guilty of that. You know, I'm, like, so nostalgic hard for anything 90s or anything like that. But at the same time, I'm like, there's so much good stuff. There's just so many more options and ways to put out music and anything, really, now that it's kind of, in terms of sheer volume, there's just technically way more stuff and good stuff statistically.
Yes.
But of course, I'm always gonna say that, and then I'm gonna love the stuff from 20 years ago more. Just because that's how it works.
Yeah.
You can't take off the nostalgia goggles, but yeah, it's a cool sentiment out there that people are kind of able to make a career out of something that might not have been able to happen. You know, not even 10, 15 years ago.
No, yeah, absolutely. It's an amazing time, especially even for guys like me who make music that's a little bit different. You know,
sure.
I didn't ever feel like this is something that I could have been able to sustain or make a career out of, you know. And now, you know, look at where we are. It's such a great time to be alive. And we're talking about that the other day. I was telling another musician that this might actually be the single greatest time to be a creator and to be alive, right?
Yeah.
This is right now. You know, this is the time.
Well, the focusing on the past can get scary because people always say, "Oh, the good old days then," but who were they good for? You know?
Yeah.
And I think generally things are improving for everyone now, which is good.
Yeah.
I'm of two minds. I'm such a hardcore nostalgist. But you can't get stuck in that stuff because then you're just going to be perpetuating the same mistakes. Yeah,
that is the truth.
So what are you working on next? I know you've alluded to a few things already, but and I don't know what you can feel able to speak about.
Well,
but what can people be excited about?
I don't know when this is coming out, but I do want to talk about. I don't want to make the announcement too soon, but yeah, there will be.
Yeah, this is probably within the next week.
All right, so there will be a surprise EP release happening on September 1st. That's my birthday weekend. Cool. And I'm really excited about putting out these songs. And it's an extension of tracks that are coming from the album I put out in 2015, Random RNDM.
Oh, cool.
And so it's called Extra Credit. And basically it's those records from that session that I didn't release. There's also new songs, and there's also a couple of remixes of existing songs that I'm super duper proud of. And it just came from me playing my music on shuffle and hearing a bunch of songs that I loved that no one else had heard. And I was just like, wow, I can't keep holding these things for hostage like this. I gotta put this out for people, you know. So that's really what it came down to. And I knew that it was time for me to put these records out. And so we've been working on just getting great art together and getting great mixes on them so they sound really, really top notch.
That's another thing. Your artwork on all your albums are awesome. I don't know if there's a consistent person or that you go to for a lot of them, but they're always super cool. Yeah.
There's a couple guys who are amazing. I'll take a moment to shout them out. Daniel Hill, Danji's Designs, Chris Flacco, Flacco Art, and Thor Thorvaldson. Usually those are my three that, depending on what I need. Like, hey, I need something realistic, I go with this guy. If I need something Mega Man, I go to Thor. If I need something 8-bit, I go to this guy, you know. So very, very proud of the art group that we've been able to find. And just you know, scouring DeviantArt or just friends of friends of friends, I've been able to just make great connections with, and they do great work.
It's a cool little art collective, whether it be music or art, and it's a whole community that it's growing too. It's getting even bigger. So
yeah.
So yeah, I had a question, and now I of course forgot it. But that's okay. Thanks for talking to me.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. That was great. I really did enjoy talking to Mega Ran. Like I said, it's the hip-hop world, let alone the nerdcore world, which is another kind of niche that I'm aware of. I'm a big nerd. I love video games and such, but it's 2 steps of moving outside of my comfort zone, I would say, and it was awesome. I love to learn about what I should be looking out for, and kind of the philosophy behind the work, the music, the art form. That's always that's the point of this show. Speaking of this show, there's another podcast out there called Butterfly Effect, started by John Ronson, and I just realized it recently because I'm a John Ronson fan. He's written some great books. He co-wrote Okja, the Netflix film by I don't want to get his name wrong, Bong Joon-ho, I believe, is the director and co-writer on that as well. Anyways, an awesome South Korean director, and that movie is probably one of my favorites, and I didn't even realize John Ronson had anything to do with it. And then I discovered just the other day that he co-wrote it, and that he's starting a podcast called Butterfly Effect. His is already, maybe he's already started it, is infinitely more popular, because I've gotten a singular tweet to be fair, saying that I have a great podcast, and I was taken aback. Not that I, don't think people like this, but I just don't receive feedback necessarily like that very often. And I'm like, thank you. Where did you hear about this? And they said from This American Life or something. I'm like, there's no way This American Life talked about this podcast. And yeah, it turns out it was John Ronson's podcast. So, John Ronson, I'll try to get him on the show. Maybe someday it'll happen. We can, as hosts of podcasts called Butterfly Effect, we can talk about why we like that phrase. Maybe that'll be the topic of discussion. But go ahead, yeah. I'm not afraid of the competition, mostly because I know there is no competition. Go check out John Ronson's podcast, Butterfly Effect, even though mine came first, and I'm sure there was one before me too. And there was a movie, and there's the term itself, so I have no ownership over this. But he's a great writer and critical mind, I would say. So that show is cool. Check it out after you listen to every single episode of this Butterfly Effect. Once you listen to all 34 and keep up regularly, then you can listen to John Ronson's Butterfly Effect. Alright. Enough talking about John Ronson. Although I really would like him on the show. I wasn't kidding about that. Next time, who knows who we'll have on. We might have a repeat guest, friend of mine, but who knows when that'll be. And in the meantime, I'm trying for some people as usual. It's kind of busy when you're working a job and interning at a newspaper and doing various other projects and trying to stay alive. It's tough to dedicate to something like this, but it's so fun to do, and it's something that I want to keep in my life for the foreseeable future. I would say forever, but that's a ridiculous thing to say. So, anyways, I've rambled on enough. Thanks for listening. Tune in next time. See ya.